Right, hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So hopefully this video actually saves because I just spoke to myself in front of camera for 20 plus minutes and my Elgato decided to... So anyways, last week I did release champion class rankings overall in my personal opinion, where I ranked all the existing classes and I explained the reasoning behind it. So today we are keeping on. I already have released champion rankings for skill and cosmic class heroes, which I deem to be the least powerful classes in the MCOC. And today we're gonna carry on and we're gonna do that with tech class. So before we get into anywhere further into actual top 10, I have to give a few honorable mentions, and that's going to be to Nebula. Nebula, in my opinion, is still significantly underrated champion, extremely capable of some crazy damage with shock and also completely shutting down robots, plus the fact that she's a robot herself gives her access to poison and bleed immunity, and overall overlooked, underrated champion in my personal opinion. Her downfall, her Achilles heel if you will, is the fact that she's quite squishy, and with her playstyle that just leads to quite stressful time trying to manage the shock charges and everything else. If she was a tankier option with maybe some bigger base damage numbers, she'd definitely be a very respected force in tech class. Alright, another champion that I do want to give a shout out that didn't make it here is Puncher 2099, who recently had some tune. I think it's more successful than people realize. I do like what they have done with him, and I kind of hope to actually dupe him as a 6-star, and he would be a legit rank 2 candidate for me, because I do like his party trick of not letting opponents throw a special attack in the fight. Now, how Vision was long time exclusive champion, and he still is quite powerful, but quite honestly, like 99% of the time, Vision, for me personally, quite often gets dismissed just because of his lack of damage output. His ability sheet is very short, but it's very effective. He's basically a robot champion that packs in double immunities, heal block, and insane amount of power control, but it just takes too long to kill opponents. So if he could get some slight tune-up done, I think we could see some great things from Vision once again. And another champion is Darkhawk, and it is a champion that just quite doesn't fit all the pieces together for me. And he also relies on RNG a bit too much if you use the Night Thrasher synergy. The Night Thrasher synergy is the perfect way to play Darkhawk, and 2 out of 3 times you're going to get an extremely potent performance from Darkhawk if you have it high. But there's going to be that one time when you're going to go in, you're going to start in armor mode, you're going to feel like that synergy is a waste of time, and you could potentially just be pushed so far back in terms of fight progression that it's not even funny. If they would rework that synergy, I think he would definitely make a potential top 10 candidate. But all the beautiful things being said, now we're going to move on to 10th spot. And 10th spot is Iron Man Infinity War. And I do think that Iron Man Infinity War is a utility machine. He has a crazy amount of different abilities and access to a ton of different versatile weapons. He can heal block, he can armor break, he can shock, he can incinerate, he can put plasmas on opponents, he can power control, he can mitigate power with his strikes, he can prevent evade, he can do a ton of different things, combination with bleed and cold snap immunity. He has armor ups, which is pretty much ever and always. The only problem with Iron Man Infinity War is that he takes too long to get into the serious damage, and again, it's kind of similar with Vision. Just most of them are going to rely on more active, more quick solution than Iron Man Infinity War. He is capable of some insane damage output, but it just takes too long to ramp up. I think if he would have some sort of help in special spamming, which let you access those shock and incinerates that combine into plasma, he would be significantly beefier champion. But nonetheless, I think he's still capable of answering to a lot of problems, and especially if you do not have overly well-established tech roster, he's a champion you can lean on to be the answer for a problem. He might not be the best answer always, but he can deal with a lot of stuff. Next champion is going to be Dr. Octopus, and I look at Dr. Octopus partially as a tech class Ronin, because there's that one thing he does better than anything else. But unlike Ronin, he's still perfectly viable, decent, good champion in many different matchups where you do not necessarily are, where you might not necessarily be able to completely benefit from that crazy piece of utility. And for those of you who do not know Dr. Octopus, he's by far the best champion to deal with improved power gain. Pretty much any single event, most of the chapters and so on and so forth. I always resort to using Dr. Octopus no matter how much underranked he is compared to the rest of my roster, because he simply is the best. Whenever opponent gains tons of power via some sort of effect, he puts a power lock on them, and then you end up spamming heavy attacks in the corner until opponent dies. Now, obviously, he has plenty of other utilities. He has access to armor up buffs, he has access to heal block, and he can control the fight extremely well in addition to his heavy attack burst damage. And I have also heard that he's a very, very potent champion in quality difficulty quest. So there are some things that are working for Dr. Octopus. Unfortunately, when it comes to traditional power mitigation, it just doesn't quite measure up to the top options in the field. And there are no immunities, and his damage output, unless you're able to spam those heavy attacks, is kind of like mediocre. So I think 9th place is perfectly respectable place in a tech class. For Dr. Octopus, so I'm going to place him there. Spot number 8 is going to go to SpiderMan, Stack Enhanced. And now I have gotten so much stick on my channel for not being on a Stacky. Through this, I've never overly enjoyed the champion. I find him too squishy. And I moved past him as quickly as I could, because at some point he was one of the best champions in the game. Unfortunately for him, there have been just so many great champions released after him, and he has lost a lot of footing. That being said, he still combines excellent utility kit with great damage, great crit rate, power control, taunt, which is still one of the most underrated debuffs in the game, and I wish we would have more access to it via more different champions. And yeah, power control and heavy attacks, access to shock, assisted special attack evades. My personal downfalls with the SpiderMan come that you do have to make a lot of compromises, and your playstyle is one of them. You do need to play him like a wind-up toy at the beginning of every fight before you get to the good damage. And then he needs to remain above 50% of his health, and that in combination with him being squishy, to me just leads to a rather uncomfortable fight where I want to remain above 50%, so I'm extremely more paranoid about not making mistakes. But if you like his playstyle, he can definitely still help you progress in the game. There's a ton of content he's good for. He's still not frequently, but occasionally gets brought in for Alliance War attack. But overall, I think his best days are behind him. And we'll see how long he remains on a top 10 list. Now we have Mysterio. Now this might be a little bit of a controversial pick, but I do value Mysterio extremely highly. Partially due to his niche utility kits. And then I also think he just encompasses a lot of useful things into one neat little package that are very easy, accessible. As in, like, his heal block from his base attack is a passive heal block, which makes it miles better than pretty much any other heal block available in the game, or, well, at least vast majority of the heal blocks. Because it's tied to your basic attacks, it's passive, can't get shrugged off, and it just works absolutely beautifully. He has access to poison, and that is a very, very rare trait. I don't think any champion here in top 10 tech class or any honorable mentions that I gave out has access to poison, and overall, poison debuff is not overly common. Now we have and a few other options for it, but we don't have that many champions who can access to a meaningful amount of poison damage, and Mysterio is one of them. Especially if you do drop a massive poison after a huge level 3, you can watch your opponents melt. Now, I do have several beefs with the character, like how you seemingly somewhat get penalized trying to benefit the most from his abilities. You kind of have to pick a lane. Do you want to focus on heal blocking or power control or poison damage? And I don't like at all how his damage doesn't scale with Suicide Masteries and boosts, basically. Because it's calculated from his base attack, and that's super annoying, so you don't get as significant increases as you'd hope for. But overall, I think that poison immunity, passive heal blocks, power control just work quite well for him, in addition to obviously him being an annoying defender and one of the pain point bosses in John Mulaney's challenge in Act 6, and so on and so forth. He certainly is a champion that gets noticed, for the better or for the worse. One last is bypass in reverse controls with M Frost synergy is also a niche utility that people do love. I personally used it for Act Point 6 as well. Both of them get immunity to reverse controls, and then they just go to town and basically ignore those chaos control nodes or whatever. So that is very cool. You can also benefit from that in Grandmaster fight if you are struggling with reverse controls that much. Right, let's move on to spot number 6. And spot number 6 actually kind of breaks my heart. Spot number 6 is Hulkbuster. And he should be higher. He should be higher because he's an insane rework. I think people are sleeping on him. And the only reason why he is number 6 is because Kabam can't get their act together. Unfortunately, everything that Hulkbuster does, and I'm gonna go over that, gets somewhat spoiled by the inconsistency of his base playstyle, base rotation, which is shoot level 2 in opponent's block and drop a ton of attacks to get again insane yellow numbers, and then drop another level 1 or whatever to finish off the fight, and you deal huge bursts of damage. The problem is that it's somewhat unreliable. With practice, you can minimize the times that it's gonna go wrong, but still, there's always a time when an opponent, without dexterity, randomly dashes back half a millimeter against the wall and your heavy attack whiffs. There's a time when you drop your level 2, and as you are about to unwind your heavy attack, your opponent just smacks in the face. And Kabam needs to fix that, because that's a base rotation and it's a base flaw in the character that takes away all the confidence when you're using him. I think Hulkbuster is an insanely potent champion. I find it incredibly fun to use, but in most, or at least part of the series content, I just don't bring him in because I cannot 100% rely on it. It's kind of like you banking on your special attack stunning when you have like 80% stun chance. Yeah, sure, it's semi-reliable, but there's always a 20% the stun doesn't happen, you get hit in the face or get level 3 or something, right? And the same thing is with Hulkbuster. It's gonna work amazing, but it's meant to work all the time because it's base character rotation. So if Kabam could fix that, possibly increase his heavy attack range, but most importantly, maybe give him some sort of passive silent stun after his level 2 or something to make sure that that heavy attack always finds the target, or at the very least doesn't result in you getting smacked in the face, he would be 3rd best tech champion in the game, without a doubt in my opinion, if we could rely on the abilities that Kabam designed for us. Unfortunately, currently we cannot. Right, but all the other great things about him, he's perfectly suicide friendly, absolutely love that, has access to regen, access to shock debuff, access to armor break, power control, stun debuffs, ton of good, great, amazing things. I love using the champion. He's great, great rework. One of the best ones that Kabam have done. If they could only be bothered to pull a finger off their rear end and make him work properly. That's the only thing that I wish from Hulkbuster. And he'd be absolutely insane beast. And I would put him in 3rd. I'm serious. But okay, let's move on to the 5th one. Is a bit sweet because it's Sentinel. And Sentinel is a champion I hated. Sentinel is a champion I hated to fight against. And ironically, that's exactly the reason why I ended up ranking Sentinel. That was an ask for my battle group officer back in the day when rank 5s were very, very rare. He was like one of my first 5 rank 5 champions. And he was ranked up for Alliance or Defense, and I wasn't overly happy with it initially. But then as I kept playing the game, Sentinel just seemed to work. And as I said, he was one of my first rank 5s, and I obviously used him a lot. Unsurprising, because he was a rank 5. But then even after I got to 20, 30 rank 5 champions, and I had half a dozen rank 2 6 stars and some rank 3 6 stars, I still kept using him, and I still kept relying on him. And out of every single 5-star champion, he's definitely in top 10 list for me personally by the amount of work that he has put in. When it counts by the progression levels, by doing Act 6, I relied on him in every single chapter. And Excel variant and Tech variant obviously is entirely made for him. So he has been extremely amazing. Now, he has to lose some ground in my mind, maybe partially because he's a rank 5 5-star and I'm moving to rank 3 6 stars. Maybe partially because he wasn't quite allowed in the last variant difficulty, and because quality difficulty nodes don't really quite benefit to this guy because he doesn't have an active armor buff. Some things, I have recently started using him less and less. Obviously, having rank 3 Warlock probably has quite a lot to do with that as well. But for any person, if you have any doubts, Sentinel is amazing rank up that will help you immensely get through Act 6, get through variants, and he can do a lot of things. I have even brought him in a Labyrinth as well, and he's capable of doing some Labyrinth of Legends length fights. Sentinel is a very kind of like unassuming champion that will never be your favorite. I don't think anybody would say that Sentinel is their favorite champion. Maybe somebody can. Like, I personally don't love every minute I use the champion. I don't like his animations, I don't like his build-up process, but I still do it because he works and he puts in work and I can rely on it. Extremely steady, he has Incinerate, to Shock, to Armor Break, to Heal Block, to healing himself. And yeah, he's a great champion to rank up, and an easy argument can be made to move him up quite easily. The reason why I haven't at the moment is because I have personally started to use him less and less and less. But maybe if I put in an effort, I would rediscover his capabilities on the most modern content. Hopefully he can put some work in Act 7 as well. We go on spot number 4, and spot number 4 is a champion where I'm giving it a bit of benefit of the doubt, because it's a recent rank up, and how well all of the amazing things from his ability kit translate to the real world, I have fully yet to see. I have used him in map 7, it did a fantastic work, I have used him here and there, but overall I still have yet to see kind of like full return on my investment, because I only ranked him up like a week ago. But the reason why I placed him up in the 4th spot is quite simple, because he does so many things extremely well. First of all, you always benefit from having this guy on your team, because he makes a single one of your teammates tankier. That's a huge thing. Should never underestimate that. And then we can carry on with a laundry list of abilities and applications for them. He has massive energy resistance, so he can deal with magics and electrodes, damage backs and whatever have you, and incinerates and shocks, so he's not immune to them, but most of the time he'll take so little damage that you will actually end up healing via willpower from most of those debuffs. And then obviously the fact that you can run him with or without suicides, and he actually heals up with suicides because he has 80% bleed resistance. Pop in some points in Coagulate and you're smiling at any Biohazard node, Caltrops node or whatever, it just doesn't matter, you end up healing from them. The fact that he doesn't crit lets you bypass Terminal Velocity, lets you bypass Spiked Armor, lets you bypass Rage and Safeguard nodes, especially in combination with his extra shock damage instead of his crits basically. So that is crazy useful. Access to Taunt, I already mentioned previously how Taunt is incredibly unique and useful debuff and crazy good utility for any champion to have. Makes fights easier. Situational power control and a crazy amount of burst damage on that level 2 if you have ramped him up. So there's a lot to like about the character, I do, and I look forward to learning more about him, posting a full-on champion review, and yeah, get on with enjoying my latest 5-star rank 5 champion. Now, spot number 3 has to go to Guillotine, unfortunately, and I say unfortunately because I personally don't like Guillotine 2099. I don't like using her. I think there are clear flaws in the character design, and I also think that Guillotine 2099 got kind of shafted over with the release of Abyss of Legends and her being practically unusable as a decent option for Abyss. But let's get to the great things. Obviously, she has a ton of utility. She's a robot, so she's double immune. She has some great synergies. Now she has a ton of power control on her level 1s or with her pre-fight abilities. She has a ton of healing with her pre-fights or when she falls below 15%, so she's extremely sustainable. And then you have reverse heal and that insane damage potential. All of the same things I said before. And nothing still apply here because Guillotine 2099 doesn't generically crit as well. But you do inflict these degeneration debuffs, which honestly sometimes can be a downside when you're going up against stuff like Masochism or Cornered or some other things. But I digress, it's still, again, kind of like double-edged sword, because quite frequently it can be helpful when you're mitigating some healing with Despair or need some damage or time effect abilities. Now, she has one of the most bonkers crazy damage potentials in the game. Unfortunately, there isn't a single piece of content where she can actually fully go all out, because Kabam said that you cannot do that in Abyss of Legends, where you are only allotted 200 plus hits for the power level that we are having access right now. So I can never see Guillotine in a full shine at the moment in the game, which is extremely unfortunate. Huge missed opportunity, because everybody thought Guillotine 2099 is going to be this new generation Aegon. And let's face it, she's not. Aegon is miles better at what he does for the abreast content. Guillotine 2099, however, has slowly but surely cropped for herself out more of a role today. She's fairly prevalent Alliance War attacker, and that is great to see. She was like in top 15 most used Alliance War champions and tier 1. And then, in addition to all of that, she has some very unique and important uses in Act 6. Obviously, she's great for Variant 3, which is Tech Variant. And all in all, again, decent option for IQ. My personal downsides, aside from the fact that she does feel really squishy to play with, is the fact that you have to finish the fight at level 3. And that's the reason why I can't force myself to love that champion. Because, first fact that if you lose your combo, you lose all your damage. I could live with that. It would be annoying, but you have these combo shield counters that you can get, and you can sig her up, and I could deal with that bit. My biggest problem is this annoying seeping voice in my head. You cannot use that special attack, you cannot use that special attack, you cannot use that special attack, save for level 3, save for level 3. And it has been a very frequent problem where either I just get carried away and I use one special attack too many and I don't make it back up to level 3 or the dies too quickly and I don't get to level 3, period. And that is very frustrating thing, because you lose all of this damage build up if you're unable to finish the fight with a level 3, which obviously automatically disqualified her from Abyss, and just comes with a ton of different problems. And what's more annoying, these problems are persistent throughout the entire fight, and they nag me, and I hate it. Every time I use Guilty in 2099, it feels more stressful than it should be to enjoy a character. If they actually changed the character up a bit and gave her an alternative way how she can start the next fight with 100 combo, or even if they gave her a synergy where she can start the next fight with 75 combo, or something that relieved the stress that comes from being forced to finish every single fight with level 3. And that's not even to mention the fights where you're unable to do so because of stuff like, I don't know, sometimes Safeguard, sometimes Rage, sometimes Gwenpool's abilities, sometimes some cheat with death mechanics going on. Overall, I just don't like it at all. I hope Kabam never does it again. Very persistent, annoying voice at the back of my head, which prevents me from enjoying using this character, so I don't like her at all. If I have an option of using her and, let's say, Guardian for the non-crit champion, I'll always go with Guardian, even if Guilty in 2099 on paper would be maybe somewhat better of an option, just because of that annoyance. But I digress. She's overall, I still think is more capable champion than Guardian, with more uses, full immunities to bleed and poison, some crazy synergies. So here we go, spot number 3 to Guilty in 2099. And first 2 spots, who guessed that? Who are the top 2 tech champions? Quite simple. Spot number 2 still goes to Warlock, but Warlock is actually currently in prime position, set to overtake Ghost in the near future. Don't get me wrong, on plain paper, Ghost is infinite times better than Warlock is. Warlock is just one of those champions that seems to work. I have a rank 3 6-star, he's one of my Alliance War MVPs, he puts in an insane amount of work, and he's one of the most popular Alliance War options. Obviously, he's great for a lot of variants, he's Excel, he's Tech, he can do amazing for heal blocking and power controlling under certain conditions, and he's just one of those champions whose ability sheet isn't overly impressive, but the fact that all of the applications come in the right ways is insanely useful. The good example here would be, who would have thought that Warlock is one of the better options for Do You Bleed Medusa, for instance, but turns out if you heal block her properly and just drop heavy attacks and never have to worry about her auto block, you have a very simple fight. So Warlock does a lot of great things, especially in Alliance War. If our opponents plays with willpower, you can conduct the fights in a manner where opponent never ever gets the special one, which is crazy. But ultimately, there are limitations to what he can and cannot do, and I love him. And the reason why I say that he's in prime position to overtake Ghost, but he still isn't there yet, in my opinion, is because of the meta shifts and meta changes, and the current meta significantly favors Warlock, and every new addition to the contest just kind of reaffirms the stereotype that Ghost is actively being countered by releasing new. And let's talk about Ghost. Obviously, we cannot ignore Ghost, second best champion in game, period, in my opinion. Insane utility in being basically pseudo-immune to every single damage over time debuff known to man, and ability to intercept on demand, which is becoming more and more important for do not go gentle nodes and some other intercept type of stuff, which Kabam seems to be willing to, or well, desperate to shout down on us. And crazy amount of damage, crazy amount of utility, ability to bypass evade, and then you can factor in her synergies with Wasp and Hood. And quite honestly, I often play Ghost without synergies, and I'm perfectly fine with that. But when you put on Hood, when you put on Wasp, you have that invincibility feeling where you can phase the level 3s, where you phase the recoil, where your specials are unblockable, and you're having the time of your life. Now, the biggest weakness Ghost faces is quite obviously the ability accuracy reduction and more kind of like dangerous armor break. And unfortunately, we can see more and more specials from opponents that require to place an armor break with you. We see more and more armor breaks in game, period. And I think quite definitely to counter Ghost or to slow her down. For instance, Cosmic Ghost Red automatically places armor break on Ghost from the start of the fight, and you're unable to do anything. So that's one matchup down the drain immediately. And then there's a ton of other fights where opponents like Terax randomly place armor breaks if you're close to them. Now, you can still do some of those fights, but still, if you're going up against Warlock, if you're infected, he drops level 2, guess what? You're armor broken. And we have more and more of these champions who have access on armor break, and they inflict that armor break without making contact, just by activation. And that obviously quite immediately stops Ghost dead in her tracks. And everybody always brings up the Quake's weakness to True Strike, but I think currently, right now in the game, much more significant and more commonly found issue is random armor breaks being placed here and there. As a good example, we have this Act 7 node, Short Burst Lockdown 2, which is just going to armor break you every time opponent throws a special attack, no matter who it is, and automatically is completely dead. Right? And we see a lot of anti-Ghost narrative being pushed, and eventually it's going to catch up. At the moment, Ghost still maintains relatively decent position in Tier 1 Alliance War meta, even though Stubborn currently kind of like screws with her. She's still like, I think, at the bottom of top 10 Alliance War used champions. I personally use her quite a bit for AQ, but that's where the mutants are coming in now, because this entire season is going to be all about mutants for most part. And quests are developing direct anti-Ghost nodes. And as soon as you see that armor break, that's it. Ghost is done. She loses all of her offensive ability and all of her utility, because she cannot phase anymore. She cannot shrug off those damage over time debuffs. And she's basically an Iron Fist. Well, worse than Iron Fist. And that's why Warlock is set currently to overtake Ghost. I don't think we're quite there yet, but I do think we need to kind of like prepare for it. Because let's face it, opponent plays armor break on Warlock, so what? Okay, you're gonna take somewhat more damage, but not a single one of Warlock's abilities get affected. Opponent plays armor break on Ghost, that's it. Lights out for Ghost. So for now, Ghost is definitely the best tech champion. But I think her days are numbered. Let me know what you guys think, and stay tuned for tomorrow's video, because tomorrow we're going to be discussing Mystic class. All that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'm going to catch you guys soon. See ya.